And personally, if schools really want to be trendsetters and be looking towards the future, I would say be brave enough to buck the trend and do what is right for our children. Give them more time to play outdoors, focus on teaching them life skills, to be curious, to be creative, and to be able to problem solve and to read and write and do arithmetic with confidence. Hello and welcome to Blooming Curious, the podcast that's all about nurturing that natural curiosity and love of learning in our elementary children and students. I'm Edwina, your host, and I'm on a mission to keep children curious and excited about learning. The days of talk and chalk are over. We're exploring the strategies that create engaged, lifelong learners. So if you're a classroom or homeschool educator, or even a curious parent, looking for creative, meaningful ways to engage children and move beyond the traditional classroom approach, then this is the place for you. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Blooming Curious. Can you believe that today is episode 50? I have shown up here every single week for the past 50 weeks to serve you, my dear listener, and hopefully you receive some value hanging out here with me. If this podcast has given you something to think or wonder about, then why not let others know by writing a review and clicking the share button and share it with someone you know. That will really help to spread the message. Today, I want to talk about trends in education. We are hurtling towards the close of 2024. Can you believe it? And of course, all over the internet, I have been seeing trends, things that experts are predicting for the future of education. And let me just add here what I think about trends. Trends are just that. They're just trends. It's the latest and greatest and most fashionable thing right now. And sometimes people get on the bandwagon and sometimes they don't. And before you know it, very often the trend passes. It's a bit like shoulder pads or ripped jeans. Across the board, there are a few trends that I have seen several sites mention. And so perhaps they will be the trends that stick. Only time will tell. I've been looking at these trends and curated what I think are the 5 most important trends going into 2025 and beyond. Number 1, virtual and online learning. In an article in Forbes magazine, they predict that brick and mortar schools will stay, but that by 2035, so that's in 10 years' time, online virtual schooling will be well established for those that either cannot or don't want to attend actual school buildings. And as technologies continue to become more sophisticated, it'll be pretty easy for children and adults to engage in online learning. And of course, virtual learning will include learning through augmented reality and virtual reality. And this will mean that students can have experiences like virtual field trips and simulating experiments. And one of the benefits of online and virtual learning is that it makes learning accessible to just about everyone, provided you actually have an internet connection, of course. And technology also makes it easier for learners with diverse needs to access education and learning that actually suits their needs. And honestly, I think that COVID really started this shift, and it's not going away. More and more of us are engaged in online learning, which we can do from the comfort of our very own homes. Of course, with an increase in technology comes the increase in social isolation, not to mention an increase in mental health concerns and negative behavior, which we're seeing in children as a result of screen addiction and the impact of too much screen time on the developing brains of young children. And I think that having access to really good online and virtual learning is amazing for children and adults. But we must make a distinction as parents and teachers that online learning and simply spending mindless hours either scrolling, surfing, or gaming online is really not the same thing. I would really encourage teachers and parents to put some serious limits on the use of technology by children whose brains are still developing. We will need to ask ourselves who this really is for. Who is benefiting from having a device in a child's hands? Because I would argue that most of the time, the child is not in fact benefiting at all. I know that many people don't agree with me, and that's okay, but the proof is in the pudding. The increased time and access that children are having to electronic devices is, in fact, not doing them any favors. So I think the one trend that we will see increasing is poor mental health and a decline in children's curiosity. And personally, if schools really want to be trendsetters and be looking towards the future, I would say be brave enough to buck the trend and do what is right for our children. Give them more time to play outdoors, focus on teaching them life skills, to be curious, to be creative, and to be able to problem solve and to read and write and do arithmetic with confidence. Getting back to basics and giving children that basic level of respect to do what is right for them should be embedded in everything we do, despite what the latest trend is. Number 2 is artificial intelligence. I really think that artificial intelligence is going to make a teacher's life easier when it comes to lesson planning, differentiating for different needs in our classrooms, and for assessment. Already, we have such tools like Lexia, for example, which I've used in my very own classroom, which targets the needs of individual students. And as a teacher, you can go in and you can see which part of the language and text students really struggled with. And then you can actually give them mini lessons that you can teach in small groups of children who have those similar needs. There are lots of other programs that do similar things for teachers, like Toddle. AI that provides personalized learning for students and provides teachers with tools they need, not just to provide targeted learning experiences for children's specific learning needs, but also to help them get their admin done in a faster and more productive manner, will be very welcome. And my guess is that AI is here to stay. Number 3 is a shift towards non-traditional models of schooling. You no longer just have a choice of sending your kid to either a public school or a private school. Now, we have non-traditional schools like the Montessori and Waldorf and Green schools, and you have homeschooling and you have microschooling. Microschooling is actually a really interesting model where up to 10 kids learn together in a way that is so much more innovative. It's personal, it's flexible, with a goal of nurturing a love of learning in children. These types of models also focus on shorter, bite-sized lessons which improve comprehension and understanding and help kids better retain information. They move at a slower pace without the constant pressure of that heavy curriculum. These alternative models of education are growing at a rapid rate. In Australia alone, homeschooling is the fastest growing education demographic in the country. In the US, the latest figures show that there are 3.7 million homeschooled children. I think it's safe to say that this is an upward trend. The whole one model for all is no longer viable. Teachers have to plan for individualized learning. This is one of those areas that makes teaching so demanding. Can you imagine planning for 25 different learning experiences in a class? It's not sustainable, and it's no wonder that there's burnout. This is why non-traditional pedagogies like project and inquiry-based learning are so great, because they allow students to learn what they're interested in to an extent and at their own pace. I created a resource that breaks down in simple steps how teachers can integrate curiosity-inspired lessons into their existing lessons. If you go to resources.bloomingcurious.com/inquiry_101, I'll leave a link for you in the show notes to get your free guide there. Now, if traditional schools want to hold on to student numbers, then they will have to seriously rethink not just what they're teaching in terms of content, but also how they are delivering that content. Schools that are brave enough to move towards more flexible models that perhaps align with real-world experiences in terms of partnering with businesses in the local community and providing opportunities for students to learn outdoors and really value play, which is one of the reasons really why homeschooling is on the rise, is because parents want greater flexibility and they want their children to play outdoors in nature. And we also need things like future learning with things like coding. Number 4 is retaining teachers and preventing burnout. Teachers are leaving education at unprecedented rates for a variety of reasons. And the trend is between 25 and 35% of teachers are leaving over 5 years. And typically, roughly half of new teachers leave within the first 5 years. In order to retain teachers, schools will need to do more. And the answer really lies in schools doing more to provide teachers with the support they need and to feel empowered and valued. Schools can do this in 3 different ways. Firstly, by not overburdening teachers with workloads that do not add to any student learning and achievement. A paper trail to keep track on teachers really isn't making the best use of their professional expertise, and it simply adds to their already massive workload. So perhaps investing in those AI models that can help teachers reduce their workload, that might be the answer. Secondly, giving teachers autonomy to use the strategies that they know is best for student engagement. This is one of the reasons I started Blooming Curious and resources for teachers around curiosity-inspired learning. Lucky for me, I had a principal that recognized the impact that my teaching was making. And because I saw how effective it was, I really wanted more teachers and students to experience that. So I created this guide to help educators integrate this methodology into their existing lessons. Just go to resources.bloomingcurious.com/inquiry_101 to download your free guide. And I'll leave the link for you in the show notes so you don't have to worry about remembering it. Thirdly is providing teachers and educational assistants with the resources, the training, and the support that mean that teachers will feel more empowered and more valued. Investing in professional development for teachers and educational assistants is something that I spoke about in episode 46 as a result of that report that came out by Lego Education, where they found that the more engaged teachers were, the more engaged students were. So it makes sense for schools to prioritize teacher engagement, support, and professional development if they want engaged students and wanted to retain teachers in the profession. And number 5 is to focus on social and emotional learning. This is our 5th trend. As we all know, learning isn't anymore just about academic results. Learning is about nurturing the whole child. Social emotional learning focuses on developing emotional intelligence and empathy and interpersonal skills. This type of learning is now part of schools' health curriculum. Just another thing that teachers have to do. Teaching children how to resolve conflict, how to manage their emotions, being able to collaborate with others and take care of their own mental well-being. The strange thing is that the more exposure and time children have on electronic devices, the more they need for social and emotional support. Going forward, this is something both parents and schools are going to have to take a long, hard look at. If we are going to continue with one-on-one iPad programs and an increased reliance on technology to complete lessons, then let's face it, children aren't just using technology for learning, and this is, of course, which leads to many other problems. Parents also have the job of policing time spent on devices, and let's be honest, how many do? I'll give you an example. A colleague of mine recently asked her class of 24 students how many of their parents actually limited their time on devices. How many out of 24 do you think put their hands up? I'll let you know. 4. A whole 4 parents out of 24 families put limits on their children's iPad use. And then we wonder why our children have increased mental health issues, behavioral issues, and problems with sleep. Okay, so that's my curated version of the 5 education trends for the future. What do you think of them? Let me know. You can drop me a line at contact@bloomingcurious.com, Listen, and before I go, I want to ask that if you're a teacher in a non-traditional setting, or perhaps you're an expert in a particular field of education, I would love to chat to you on the podcast. If this is you, then also email me at contact@bloomingcurious.com and let's see if we can organize a chat on the podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in and spending this time with me. If you've got value here today, then please leave a review. And also don't forget to go to the show notes and download your free guide, How to Integrate Curiosity-Inspired Learning into Your Existing Lessons with Inquiry 101. Thanks again for being here. I'll see you again next week. Same time, same place. And until then, stay blooming curious.